where you can feel connected. And as a leader, when you can connect with people, then you can influence them. And when you can influence them, then you can help them accomplish what they never thought possible.
Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Today we're joined by the creator of the Impact Driven Leader Coaching Program, Tyler Dickerhoof. He's the host of the Tyler Dickerhoof Show, where he engages in insightful conversations with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts to inspire growth and success. With over 20 years of experience in business and leadership development, Tyler brings a wealth of knowledge to his audience, helping them unlock their potential and create meaningful impact. As a sought-after mentor and speaker, he shares strategies on leadership, communication, and self-awareness. You can learn more about his coaching programs, resources, and his podcast at tylerdickerhoof.com. Before we hear from Tyler, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at JAMODI Podcast.
Are you ready to level up your team's skill development? Well, Bology is here to support you in driving accountability and skill development. The Bology app is more than just tracking. It's a resource for enhancing skills, knowledge, and mindset across your program. Join coaches all across the country using Bology to simplify training and empower your athletes. Let's build consistency, accountability, and skill development together.
Yeah, well, I just first want to thank you so much for giving up your time, coming on here. I usually say talking hoops with me, but I think what we'll talk about is the 90%, which is the culture, how we lead others, how to be better for the people that we lead. And I think that's where you do such a great job. I met you on Instagram or found you on Instagram. So excited for this, Tyler. Thank you for giving up your time.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. It's exciting. I read your book, Leftovers. So
Did you really? Wow, man.
Yeah,
So I'll take it down.
They're right over there. Yeah, exactly. I mean, partly because, hey, one thing as a podcast, here's what's shocking to me as a host myself. I'll get on a podcast with someone, maybe an author, and I interview several authors, and I'm going through and we're talking, and they're like, "You read my book?" I'm like, "You're an author. You're releasing a book, and the podcast host hasn't read your book." Like, man. Seriously? And so, learning about you, getting prepared, I wanted to be able to have a good conversation. I wanted to learn about Matt. I wanted to learn about what you've gone through. And, there's I'm from Ohio. You're from Pennsylvania. There's that, element of connectedness. Yes, learning about you I honestly had completely blanked. I didn't even remember about what happened at Baylor. And then I was like, and I was talking to a buddy of mine about it. And it was like, I forgot all about it. And like, it totally, to know and to learn about your journey and the ups and downs. And here's something that I appreciate. You asked me a question in email here, getting prepared. And one of the things that I know, and we're going to talk about basketball, we're going to talk about coaching, we're going to talk about culture. There's something that I think, and I'd love to kind of just have a conversation. How much has the vulnerability of you sharing it by writing the book changed how you have coached players since that book released?
Man, great question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know you're the I want to have that conversation.
It's okay. I love for it to go back and forth. And so again, a basketball coach, not necessarily a podcaster, but love talking about this stuff. So thank you for reading it. Blown away that you would do that. And that's next level right there. Like it kind of gave me some notes on, I need to make sure that I am that level prepared in the future. I do some research and I get to know a little bit, but I don't know if I've ever read someone's book before, if they have, but I need to. So to your question, in starting to write it, my life was still going down a path that wasn't very productive. But I started this story about really more about the basketball piece and then the tragedy and the scandal. And then, golly, okay, I'm realizing that some of these things are lining up. When I really started to make poor choices was right around this time. Yeah. And now I'm still in this mode. And so I'm kind of writing this book, and I realized at this point, there's not really a good ending to this. And I had to make a choice.
Start writing the book?
came out in 13, so probably about 2008, 2009. So I was only 5 or 6 years removed from it.
Still in it, yeah.
But I realized it didn't really have a good ending because I look back at the story and some of the catalysts for the change back then, but I'm still kind of in this mode. Then my 30th birthday, and then where my wife comes into play, which I'm a believer, so I feel like that wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
And then life change happens, and I'm able to look back and really see the path and the journey, and it has an ending. And so that's why it kind of took so long to do is because I thought, here's a good kid, outwardly
You're
good,
still on the journey, Matt.
falls
Still
apart.
on
No
the journey.
doubt.
It's
No
not.
doubt.
It's not over yet. You're still on the journey. But I say that because just you thinking about it and sharing that element of what you've gone through, and here's something that I believe is, and people have impressed this upon me. We're best able to serve the person that we were, or the experience that we can relate to. When you think about coaching kids, and when you think about what you're doing there, it's magnified when you see somebody walk in and maybe they're dealing with something that you can say, oh, I didn't handle that well.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's and I know you have a son, it's someone that, hey, maybe they're dealing with some challenge and adversity that you dealt with later on, and they're a kid that is dealing with that. And you can say, all right, I need to put my arm around this kid because all they need is my support.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend this morning, and all three of my kids, I have 3 kids in high school right now, a senior, a sophomore, a freshman, and my youngest 2 are boys. They're playing football and brand new high school. And my oldest son is a starter on varsity. He's played all 3 levels of the game, started all 3 levels. He has said, I can't run all 3 levels. So he's offense and special teams. My youngest is a quarterback, cornerback. So does both offense, defense. And the teams are struggling. All 3, varsity, JV, and freshmen, are struggling. And I was talking to a friend of mine who has a son on the team as well, JV team. And what we were talking about, and he goes, you've told myself and you've told our other friend this so many times. So all a coach's job is to impart confidence. And we kind of talked about it, and we discussed a little bit. And I said, if there's one universal truth that I would hold in leadership, all the things that I've learned, a leader's job is to build confidence. And if you do that, I don't care if you're the Amazon, I don't care if you're Apple, the top of the top, or you're coaching a AAU, a rec league basketball team in greater Dallas. It does not matter. Or here in the Pacific Northwest. You have one job, and one job only. That is to impart confidence. Because a confident player, a player that knows their coach believes in them, they'll do anything. And when that confidence struggles, like what you went through and your last year at Baylor, and you're like, and then everything else, it's like what you needed and what you got as you told the story, even though you didn't realize it, because maybe you weren't open to what you saw, is Coach Drew did a lot to impart confidence in you. I read that and I learned that, and he probably still does, because he appreciates that. And when you think about that 20 some years later, and I think about the coaches that have impacted my life, had nothing to do with sport, right? You played a little bit of professional basketball. There's been a lot more outside of you ever playing the sport. But when you can stop, and as we're having this conversation, or I'm thinking about the times and the coaches that imparted something on me, had rarely anything to do with that sport, had everything to do with life. And that makes me sad as I watch, the varsity, the JV, the freshman football teams right now in my kids' school, and all those kids are yearning for is someone to impart confidence in them and belief in them. And what's funny is that we're at a JV game last night, and the team that had the most confidence imparted in them the belief in them, they played the hardest and they won. And the talent was no different. If anything, the more talented team actually lost.
I do think it's such almost an easy distraction, or it happens quite a bit, where we focus on the 10%, which is the X's and O's and things that schematically will actually help us to perform on the field. but we spend all of our time on that and all of our focus and worry, and it's so easy to let go of the 90%. I do want to go back because I never answered your
Keep driving.
question, which was why or what it felt like to do that. So the decision moment was, do I do what I've been doing in life, which is fake it, act like I'm doing really well and make myself look good? Or do I be honest and vulnerable? And I tried to think, and one thing talking with my players and now and a lot of coaches, the most inspiring people are the ones that are authentic and real and let you in about the ways that you struggled and things that, because that's what I learned from people. I don't really learn from the people that act like they have everything together. Maybe they do now and they struggled in the past, but ones that do let you in a little bit. And that was the decision. My mom wasn't thrilled with it. She would have probably rather it was the good version, but it was freeing, and it's actually helped me a lot when I do share my testimony or I meet new people. Or why should I hide anything? It's already out there. Like, just be yourself and be vulnerable. So I do think it would be a great activity for everybody to go through. Maybe you don't have the national scandal and tragedy to go with your story, but everybody has things that they're not proud of and things that they've learned from and ways that they're better. But that's the answer to your question.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go to the even deeper level, and this is something that I've walked through is the traumatic experience that you had at that, in all of that circumstance, right? And how it affected the rest of your life. There's no yardstick for someone's adversity. There's no yardstick. It does not matter. There is no measurement that says, well, Matt, you dealt with that. I dealt with this, or they dealt with, oh my God. There's no yardstick. Your adversity is your adversity. And the adversity that we go through in life, if we choose to embrace it as a tool to drive us, can make us better. But if we allow the adversity that we face to bury us, it's kind of like there's a story about a donkey that fell in a well, right? And a farmer goes up and finds his donkey in the well and is like, there's no way I can get him out. And so then he goes to his friends like, hey, can you help me get my donkey out of the well? And he's like, well, okay, I can. And he grabs a shovel. He's like, what are you going to do? Well, you're just going to bury the donkey, let him die? He goes, well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll just start throwing dirt in there. And if the donkey, gets buried, it gets buried. What did the donkey do? It just kept stepping on top of the dirt and stepping on top of the dirt and stepping on top of the dirt and walked out. And that's also an image of, if we allow the adversity to bury us, it will. But if we allow the adversity to fill in the hole, then we can step out of it. But there is a hole. We have to accept there's things that happen that are a hole. You went through adversity that created a hole in life. And, I've gone through adversity that's created a hole in my life. And it took me many long years to come to grips with it and understand and realize that adversity and the ability to talk about it, the ability to share about it was so freeing, because what it did for me is my adversity was a catalyst that allowed my insecurities to be expressed as a barrier in relationship with others. And I had to come to a point where I had enough maturity and enough learning and enough growth and enough awareness and enough curiosity and enough introspection and enough listening to God to say, that's what's going. And that's what's causing the issues. And that's what the problem is. And in that, it's also that I learned that's a way for me to serve me. That's why I'm here on this podcast, is because I've committed to say that the adversity I went through, which for me was the death of a younger brother who died in a farming accident and I drove over him. That was my adversity at 14. And it wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I was in my late 30s, early 40s, 24, 25 years later, that I understood how that adversity caused so much tension in my life. And it was accepting that and appreciating and growing through it, that all of a sudden now I understood, when I was out coaching my son's soccer team or basketball team or football team, my job wasn't the X's and O's. No way, no how. It was, how could I help put my arm around kids that were maybe going through something. Because at 14, I was going through something, and I didn't have a basketball coach. I didn't have a coach that put their arm around me and said, hey, I need you on the team, because you need the team. And that's what I think is so great about team sports and understanding the team rarely is made by a player, but the team makes the player. And that's the great value in club sports and high school sports, is that often makes the player. The player doesn't make the team, maybe sometimes. But even in those cases, it's usually.
Well, you take the great player and you put them 1-on-5 and they lose.
Yeah.
And so
totally. Yeah, exactly.
Something earlier about I love the idea of the different adversity. There's no measuring. Like, so one person you can't be as upset because you haven't gone through what I've gone through. Like, I appreciate that. But you did say the word choose. And so you can choose to allow that adversity to continue to define you, or you're kind of stuck in it, or you can choose to learn from it, look past it, and then help others with it. But Tyler, how the choice there, how does somebody make that? When does that happen? Or is it just like takes what it takes?
No,
trust the process. Is that what it is?
Well, it's a journey. I was 14, like I mentioned, when my younger brother died, when I drove over him. And my initial response was just intensity. I was just going to push myself through whatever challenge came. And what I found by that is I pushed a lot of people away. I could push myself through any challenge. And what I ended up finding over time is I just left carnage. It was a bulldozer. And then eventually it came to a head, and it was just like, I can't keep doing this. And one of the things that hit me is, as I was going through this process of trying to understand how I was showing up in the world, what it was about, where, and this was in my mid to late 30s, right? This wasn't, as a 20-year-old. This was as a, 37, 38-year-old. And one day I was driving home from taking my son to soccer practice, and I'm at a stop sign. And I kind of look to my left, and I'm turning right, and I start to pull out as it's clear. And I'm a person of faith, and I hear God say, your brother's life has meaning. And the reason why is because up until that point, I hadn't really talked much about. If somebody asked, somebody knew, fine, whatever, but I hadn't talked about the effects of intensity and what that did in my life. And it's also how that affected business, how that affected, client relationships, how that affected relationships with my wife, my kids, my siblings, my parents, everything. And that's when I understood that, being willing to talk about it and being willing to be very frank about how I either dealt with it or how I tried to hide from it didn't give his life meaning. He was 3. His life had meaning. Absolutely. Because I understood that I could talk about it, and I could share about the adversity that I have overcome and in dealing with that. Do I think it's a big deal? I don't. Because I don't know any different. I just chose to push through it, and that caused challenges, but yet I came to a point, it's like, okay, there's more that I can do with it. Yeah. Meaning that I can serve people, and I can understand my intensity and how that created such a barrier in my ability to connect and have empathy on others. Man, that was a problem relationally. But it also helped me understand that the number one thing a leader can do to lead and influence and serve is connect with others. I would imagine if you stop and you think about all of the years that you played basketball, or all of the kids that you've coached, whether it was yourself or others, the ones that probably accomplished more than what their ability or skill set would allow, are either the coaches that you connected with best or the players that were most connected. And I believe that is not absolute to basketball. It isn't, absolute to football or soccer, or it isn't absolute to a teacher. It isn't absolute to any industry. Where you can feel connected And as a leader, when you can connect with people, then you can influence them. And when you can influence them, then you can help them accomplish what they never thought possible.
That connection piece is so important because we said earlier that a lot of coaches focus on the 10%, which is the X's and O's. And those are important, obviously, but players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that connection piece, without it, then maybe the 10%, the X's and O's, never really matter to them or become that important. You mentioned confidence earlier, and there is a big debate in the coaching world of, do we give confidence? Do we build confidence? Is confidence something that only players need to have it themselves? And maybe we can say or do things that take it to another level or crush it. But if you're saying that one of our major roles is to impart confidence, which I agree with, how do we do that best with our players?
You got to be honest. You got to be realistic. There's so much of a world that, it's interesting, especially in coaching and sports and youth sports. And there's such a finger pointed at parents that, they're causing the issue. It's like parents are an issue when coaches don't deal with it. Meaning when you have a parent problem, well, that's a personal leadership problem.
Yeah.
You're not setting the expectations. You're not being open, honest, transparent, and saying, hey, you know what? Billy is phenomenal at X, Y, and Z. But you know what? He's not going to take our end of the game foul shots because he struggles at the line. Can he get better? Sure. But I'm just not going to put him in that place. So instead of saying your kid is the greatest and absolutely the greatest, and then they're like, well, why isn't he taking, he's the best player on the team. Why isn't he taking our foul shots or whatever else? It's just because that's not where he excels. And it's something that, benign, but is the same that coaches struggle because of their own confidence. Because so often, you've gone to way more leadership coaching clinics than I have. But how many times do you go to a coaching clinic and they spend, 75% of the time on drills and X's and O's? Here's schematics. Here's how we're going to defend the low post. Here's how we're going to, set up press break. Here's how we're going to do different things. All of these different factors. But how many of them sit down and say, hey, be a leader, and that means you got to start with the parents, and you got to, be transparent with the parents. Here are the expectations. Here are the non-negotiables. Here is how we have our first parent meeting. Here's how we deal with that adversity. Usually, I would guess that's like one optional session that somebody might go to, and there's like 3 people
back room parent meeting at 9:30.
But you're not going to a basketball conference with Scott Drew or Roy Williams or Mark Few that are teaching those classes. You aren't. They're going through and, Mark Few is teaching about, his offensive style. Here's what we run. That isn't what coaches need. When Mark is spending time, and I say Mark because I'm here in Spokane, Gonzaga's here, right? And when he's in Paris as part of the staff, and he's sitting down and he's talking to Steve Kerr, are they sitting down and spending a lot of time saying, hey, what offensive set do I run? He's not. He's saying, hey, how do you work with players? How do you deal with everything else going on in their life, from a professional point of view? Because now, as college coaches and dealing with the NIL, we're actually dealing with a professional athlete mindset. Maybe we have in the, behind the curtain for years, but yet now it's way more visible. How do I deal with that pressure? Because you know what? I've established that I can deal with the X's and O's, and maybe, the game evolves a little bit, we'll change a little bit, and that's a small tweak, but it's all the other things. How are you dealing with their families? How are you dealing with, the circus around them? And yet, so when we go to these coaching clinics and we don't talk about that, and we talk about, all the things, but then it's no wonder when coaches it doesn't matter the sport, overwhelmingly, they're saying all of our problems are parents. Nope, parents aren't the problem. Parents are what I would say largely have not changed. Parents want the absolute best for their kids.
Yep.
Now, some of them are altruistic because they want the best for their kids, but a lot of them, I would say some of them, a lot of them want it altruistically because they want the best for their kid. But there's some of them that want best for their kid for themselves. But guess what? How you deal with those is the same as you deal with the other ones. You have to be transparent, you have to be honest, and you have to be authentic. And if you can deal with that, then there's no challenge that you can't get through. Could there be hard and difficult conversations? Absolutely. There's going to be hard and difficult conversations. That's life. But if you anticipate that going in and know the case, then shame on you for being frustrated. You have to deal with that. That's part of the job. So
there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, well, let me get back to the part about the confidence. Because again, that comes back to that layer of how do you deal with it? Well, if your confidence is off, it's understanding if you're dealing with the parents, that top level, especially as I would say amateur coaches. Hey, how much pressure are they putting on the kid? Are you watching? Are you, looking around at the end of the game and you see the kid who, goes up to his dad or his mom and gives him a hug and is smiling?
Heads down. Yeah.
Or are you seeing the kid that is, sees his dad in the stands and his dad storms out and the kid, goes to the locker room and is the last one in the locker room, doesn't want to leave because he knows as soon as he gets in the car, he's going to get chewed out for every mistake that he made or didn't make. What are you doing as a coach? Are you piling on? Hey, the kid football player, he threw a, interception into, quadruple coverage. Okay. But is that kid smiling after the game because he understands it's just a game and he made a mistake? Or is he, his dad just drilling a hole into him? It's like, you embarrassed me, right? And that's a part of a job as a coach. When you talk about confidence, that's a deeper level. It's also saying, hey, is the player mentally strong enough to say, I'm going to put you into an adverse situation and just expect you to sink or swim? That doesn't work. Mm-hmm. One thing that, and again, along this confidence, and I've realized that, I'm 45. I much grew up in the world of sink or swim, right? It was kind of like, throw them in the deep end. They're either going to figure it out or not. And so many coaches today, I would say, that are relatively my age, were either the same, sink or swim, or they just didn't face the adversity. So they expect people to just figure it out and do it because they did. It was easy for them, right? And the problem with the sink or swim approach is a lot of people drown. A lot of people drown. And by that is the people that swim usually have no idea how they swam. They just survive. And so then you get into the situation where, it's a coach and it's like, all right, well, you're coaching this team and you're thinking about, all right, well, do I have to impart confidence? They should just do it. And it's like, well, that's great for you that maybe was super athletic and, coordination came really early and easy, as opposed to the kid who wasn't coordinated, grew 4 inches during a basketball season, who you're just like, dude, can the kid run? That kid needs confidence that they have value, because when you're imparting value, confidence into them, you're also imparting confidence into the others. And, again, that piece that is missing is if we don't know how we got there, it's really hard for us to help others get there too. And so instead of this idea of throw them in the deep end, let them sink or swim, but they'll figure it out. Well, that can work for some, but you end up having a lot of carnage, as opposed to, no, we need to be swim coaches. We need to teach people how to swim. And it's whether it's basketball, whether it's, life, whether it's teaching. And that's the real crux that we're seeing today. And so many organizations that are saying, Gen Z, they just, they don't want to do the work. Well, I don't know. I see some pretty successful teams out there. I see some teams that are absolutely work their tail off. I see some teams that, are fully dedicated. Well, what do they have that all these others supposedly don't have? Do they have somebody that builds confidence in them? Do they have someone that's willing to teach them? Is there someone that's willing to, dig a little bit below the surface and find out what they really want? Because it's not like it was 20 years ago where kids will do anything for that. They have way more options now. They're like, I don't have to put up with you.
Yep.
And that's again, that whole confidence, that whole sink or swim, that whole responsibility of a coach is being constantly reframed as our society changes.
Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
That's a lot. I know. I'll let you kind of.
Really good. And I took some notes, so I think I can go through it a little bit. But no, what you said about kids there at the end, I don't like it when I hear coaches or others say that kids have changed. I think kids are almost the same. If anything, it's more of not them changing, but something that happened around them that changed, which is the phones. Like before, when you mentioned, you said you and I were just, yes. What do you want me to do, Coach? Coach Bliss, you want me to run through that wall? Yes, sir. Like I'll do my very, very best. But now the question is why? And if you can get angry at that question or figure out why are they asking that question, which is they have access to why anytime that they want. So why would a coach be any different? Why are you different from my phone? If I can ask my phone why can't I ask you why? So for coaches, I feel like today's player makes us better because we better know our why. We better know our answers to questions. And because I said so is not good enough. And I think that's a really good place to be for us, going back to imparting that confidence. You mentioned the college coaches, and I agree. I think they should be good with parents, but there is this idea that when the kids are dropped off, that relationship is done at that point. Whereas high school coaches, we're partnering with and we're right alongside. You nailed it with the communication piece, with honest communication, being truth tellers. Shawnee Harley was a Canadian women's coach for basketball for 20 years, and she has an organization now called Winning Matters, and she talks about choose your hard. Like you got to choose your hard every day. As a coach, telling the truth is hard, but so is having an upset parent in your office because you didn't tell them the truth or they're misguided. So coaches, choose your hard right there. I choose to tell them that truth in that time. And I just said the word, all of this, what you're talking about, knowing the kid, knowing the parent situation, being able to zoom out after the game and see what's happening and make those mental notes, it all takes time. And you have to dedicate time to the relationships with the player, whether it's a 10-minute meeting or it's taking advantage of the time that that non-scheduled time that sometimes you just see a player and it is a God thing that you two are in the gym at that moment. You got to take advantage of those. But the whole idea is, how can we get all of the stakeholders in this kid's life? I'm one. The coach is one, the administration at our school is one, the AAU coach is one, the girlfriend is one. Like they have all these stakeholders. We got to get everybody together. The only way is through communication and the truth.
Here's something that, and again, I know that your directive in doing this is to serve kind of, the community that you're a part of, right? Basketball coaches and just that greater community sport, right? I was talking to a person that's part of my community that he's a coach he's a football coach and a position specific coach. And we're talking one day and we're discussing this and just discussing some of these things. And I told him this is a realization that I have. And I'm going to ask you the question first, and then I'm going to go into my realization, and then I'm going to follow up. It's, why do you coach where you coach? Okay, so stop and think about that. And this is what I told him. I said, there's a reason why a 42-year-old is coaching youth sports. It's because they realize they can make a tremendous impact on their life, or that's all the better they are. And that's a real sobering thought when you stop and think about it. There's a reason why. Because if you're 42 and you're exceptional at getting the most out of people, You have more job offers coming at you to coach the higher levels that you could if you're willing to take that sacrifice, whether to family, to time, and all those things. If you're pursuing, I want to be a coach, right? Doesn't matter the sport. I want to do this professionally. I'm aiming to do this professionally. If you're really good, then you're going to go to the highest levels of the sport. And if you're not, then you're going to be stuck constantly looking for a job. Now, that may be really painful for people to hear. Sorry, it is what it is. I am where I am. Well, I am where I am because of either the choices I've made or the choices that I've made. Am I willing to recognize my limitations? And if I'm not willing to recognize my limitations, why should that be someone else's problem? And so often we see this, and it comes back to the X's and O's and comes back to what's really more important. Is it more important to build a connection and get the most out of players and help them develop? Or do I need to go watch film and devise the most amazing game plan with all of the schematics and all of the timeout plays and all of the, you name it, and give it to a team? Because I can guarantee that if all things are held equal, talent is held equal, the coach that does the most to get players, to buy in, to believe, to give the effort, to know that their work is worth something, will always, always outperform the team that does not have any of that, but has the absolute best world-class X's and O's. Because if you don't have the confidence, you're never going to execute. You're never going to execute. But here's what's amazing there. Because it's real easy to say that and think about football and basketball and soccer and maybe even, lacrosse, go through all the sports. It's real easy to think about that. But what about the school you teach at? What about the office, the sales organization down the road? Are they thinking about that? Oh, we have to have the absolute best marketing plan and sales strategy in order to actually go to market. Really? How about your people? How about your people know their customers? How about your people know your customers' people? How about they be a part of the community and want to impact the community? How about all those things? Because I tend to believe if you focus on those things, you'll get more out of everyone, and the impact will be much higher than if you just have the perfect strategy, the perfect X and O. Again, that's a hard challenge for so many people, and it was a hard challenge for me because that means I had to address my insecurities. I had to own my fears and insecurities. Going back to that coach that doesn't want to have those hard conversations, right? Choose your heart, right? Why do they want to have those conversations? Because they don't want to face their insecurity. Oh, maybe I don't know how to deal with this. Maybe, I don't like having hard conversations because then I get put on the spot. Yeah. Maybe, it's easier for me to just say, well, they're not good enough, as opposed to saying, well, this is why they're not good enough. It's easier to say, I didn't play the player during the game, because rather than go to their parent and say, hey, they didn't play because they aren't willing to give the effort. They didn't play because, you know what? Hey, I didn't want to set them up to fail because I understood them playing and failing was going to ruin their confidence more than me, sitting them on the bench and saying, hey, the matchup wasn't right. Right? It's being willing to be honest with the player and say that. You probably had times where you didn't play as much in college because you're like, dude, the matchup's you're gonna get eaten alive. As opposed to that way. Well, I mean, but those are the coaches that are willing to have those conversations and to have those in fairness. Here's the thing, everyone knows. There's no game that you walked into that your teammates didn't know what you could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
There was never a game where you walked into, playing against Texas or Kansas or whoever it may be, and they're like, hey, you think you can take Kirk Heinrichs? You think you can take him? You think you can absolutely just own him tonight? They were like, Yeah, you can hold your own, but you know what? He's going to get plenty of his because that's what he is. There's no secret there, right? And what's amazing there is you don't have to be that old to know that. And coming back to the phones and the digital media and all that stuff, 12-year-olds, no, they know what other people can do. They know what their kids are, do. They know what that player at whatever high school can do. And there's ones that are all social media show. And then there's ones like, no, he's a baller. And they know. So if as parents and coaches we're unwilling to honestly address it, then shame on us because we're the ones that are hiding from the reality, not everyone else. They get it. But what can you do in spite of that?
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, guess what? This is what we're going to do. I'm going to play you this segment of minutes. We're going to rotate here. We're going to do this. We're going to slide people around. This is where the X's and O's, because I understand if we do this, it gives us the best opportunity to win. Hey, Billy, this is how we're going to manage the game because I want to put every single player on the team in a place to succeed because that's what's most important to me. Because if every player on the team is put in a place to succeed, then our team has the greatest opportunities to succeed.
No, it's good. And I think you just nailed something too about there's two things that can be true at the same time. And I think it's really important for parents and your players to know this, that we can be about winning and we can also be about development.
Oh,
those
100%.
things aren't exclusive of each other. Like you can, for us, our goal is to win every Tuesday and Friday night. So I'm going to put the best group on the floor that works together to give us the best chance to do that. It's not guaranteed, but to honor them, to honor the mission, that's what we're going to do. And we don't apologize for that. So I think in a parent meeting, like you got to nail that. But then also your son will play or will be developed every single day going to your X's and O's. If it's not any, or this is beyond sports too, if people that you're leading aren't developing underneath you, then there's going to be cracks, there's going to be slippage, there's going to be people that start to look elsewhere, like look what they got, that comparison, look what they get to do. So the way that, this is just my opinion, my advice to coaches or whoever, don't be ashamed that we're about winning and really embrace that, but also let them know that we're going to develop them every single day. And if you foster an environment of competition, that just brings those two things together. Parents, every practice, you're welcome to come. Doors are open. Every practice, your son has an opportunity to compete for time. We don't have a set group now that will not be. And I just kind of jumped in my head too. You are right though, that the kids know. They also know that when you're just giving them crap, when you're just telling them filler stuff, when you're not being real with them, man, you're really, really good. Well, then why aren't I playing? Or actually, I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at that. Yeah. So it's on us to be good teachers and to give meaningful feedback that they can actually take. And listen, I didn't play, but coach is working with me. Like we got a plan. We're going to get better. And then the last part too is the playing time that inevitably comes up in every parent meeting. Even if they say, listen, I want to meet with you. It's not about playing time. Flag. It's about playing time. So, but that's okay. Open door. It's your son. Let's talk about that. I need to be prepared as a coach to justify and explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. But playing time does not equate to care. I don't care more for the people that play a lot and less about the people that don't. And a great Shaka Smart, a great question he asked all of his players is, does our relationship depend on playing time, your playing time? If you only like me because I play a lot and you dislike me because I don't, then we're missing the boat on what this is about. So I think that's you nailed so many great points.
Let's talk about basketball, right? Okay, let's use 2 20-minute halves, 10-minute quarters, whichever it may be. There's 5 players. There's 200 minutes a game that get played. 200 minutes. So you got 10 guys. All right, well, on average, if everyone plays the same, they play 20 minutes. Okay, well, you're going to have some people injuries. You're going to have some people in foul trouble. You're going to have some people. There's going to be this natural ebb and flow. There is never going to be a game ever where every single player plays 20 minutes.
Right.
it also comes back to, well, I have to respond to what the other team does. There's an element of that. What are we doing well? What gives us the best chance to succeed at what we do great, or what the combination of 5 guys on the court, 5 players on the court do great? That will determine how it works. Here's the other part that it's something that I look at, right? It's all right. We got 4 players on the court. We have, say we have a roster of 10. Again, we got 6 people on the bench. They're all healthy. They're all able to play in foul trouble. No foul trouble. Well, who's the one that goes in? Is it the one that hasn't played the least minutes? Is it the one that maybe plays the most minutes? Is it someone who I just need to get them in? Or is it, hey, I'm going to play the person that makes the other 4 better? And maybe that is the solution. Maybe there's a couple options. Well, where are we at in the game? Oh, it's 3 minutes before half. Oh, I know that what my starting lineup is coming in the third quarter. I'm going to play, Henry, because I know Henry will do a great job in there. Henry will go in and work hard, but Henry going in there means that Peter gets to sit on the bench a little bit longer. That's what makes sense. And I also know Henry going in with the other 4 combination of guys, he's not going to get upset and beat up and then all of a sudden not show up for me in the second half because his confidence is in the tank. Yeah. And to me, those are things that as I've coached and whenever I coach whatever sport, that's something I'm always thinking about, because to me, that's how you develop players in a team. And it comes back to the whole development piece. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine this morning. There's a scoreboard for a reason. And if you aren't trying to win as you're developing, then you're not developing, because part of developing is a winning mindset. And a winning mindset is we can accomplish anything. Because here's the difference. If say we have a team and say we don't want to win, or maybe we don't want to score, you get to a point, it's like, oh, we can't score 100 points and, outscore the other team. Like my son's middle school basketball team, 7th grader, they played 4 of the 5 guys starters had played AAU together for years. First game, they're up 17-0 before the other team gets the ball across half court.
That's tough.
It just is what it is. It was they didn't have many athletes, and this was a team that knew how to play, and they played well, and they played fast. And it's like, that's their style. They ended up winning 94-9. And in the entire second half, they, played a half-court offense. They were fast break. They slowed down half-court because they worked on it. Great. But at some point, it's like, are you going to say you can no longer play the game and work at what you do best because you're afraid of how the other team feels? It's like, no, I still have to do me, because that's part of development. And there's a scoreboard. And guess what? When we get through life and we get to a point where if there's no accountability, there's no scoreboard, everyone just plays or 20 minutes, right? Well, what happens when you go to your job and you don't show up? Do we accept that, oh, he didn't show up today, but I'm going to keep paying him because, everyone gets their 20 minutes? Or is it they show up and they don't do what they're supposed to do, and, they can't get fired because we have to keep them a job? Well, that's what spills into that mentality and thinking that's okay. Right. And that's not fair to everyone else. And so when you have a scoreboard, you need to develop to play to win the game, because that's why you keep score. That's the game. But here's the other piece. And this is what I often experienced and think about in regards to develop. Being an incubator, not an incinerator. Because too often when we're so focused on winning, we will burn people out. We burn people out because, we got to keep our best players on the court all game because that's our chance to win. Well, no, that may work for one game or maybe a couple games, but eventually they're going to get broke down. They're going to get tired. They're going to get whatever. Or the other players that you're going to need at some point are like, I don't even need to show up because I'm never going to get playing time. The coach doesn't even look at me. That's an incinerator system. And guess what? That doesn't work. But if you're an incubator and you say, hey, I'm going to help you develop, I'm going to help you get better because we need everyone at every point, because I don't know when someone's going to get injured, but I need to also have that mentality of I need to give it my all to grow. And that happens the same in work. Is if you're constantly telling people what to do and telling people what to do, you're just going to burn them out. As opposed to the best thing that can happen. Imagine you're at a, even in our current college basketball landscape, would you rather hold people flat and say, well, I don't want to develop them so much because they may leave Abilene Christian and go to Texas, and then I lost them. So I want to kind of hold them because you know what? I need to keep all my guys here.
Good, but not too good.
Yeah, because if they're too good, they're just going to jump in the portal and they're gone.
Right.
Well, because there was actually a conversation I had with, we were talking about a college football kicker. There was a Miami of Ohio. The kicker ended up leaving to go to Alabama. And the coach was so upset. He's like, Alabama, they took our player. It's like, really, dude? You're not doing yourself any favors. Oh, you had such a good kicker that you developed a kicker that he could go then kick at Alabama and be top tier college football? Great. Let me go develop another one. Hey, let me send another one to Ohio State. Let me be that coach that develops players so good that the other coaches are coming to me and say, hey, Matt, you did such a good job developing these guys. Why don't you come join my staff? Hey, why don't you do such a good job developing that all of a sudden now you're hired as the coach there? Because let's think about being an incubator rather than just holding people back and incinerating them and thinking that's how we're going to have more success. That's how we're going to make an impact. That's how we're going to make a difference.
I love that idea of incubator versus incinerator. Never heard that before. Definitely going to borrow it.
Yeah, you can use it.
What I've learned too from our goal is to have that incubator type system. We have 43 minutes a day where we do skill work every day of the week throughout the year, in season, out of season. That's where that's the thing when you're talking with these parents or players, when you say, yeah, we'll develop you. Will you? Really?
Yeah.
Show me the time. Like, show me where you're going to do that throughout the day.
What does that mean? Yeah. What's developing? Is developing is like, hey, here's a sheet, go do these 6 exercises? Or is it a personal development where it's like, all right, you need to work on your ball handling. You need to work on, whatever those things. Maybe you need to work on your explosiveness.
Yeah.
Again, to me, that's a whole part of the dynamic that is the difference between just mailing it in or doing it.
Yeah, playing coach is what somebody told me. Are you playing coach or are you really a coach? And I like that. But one thing I've learned from being trying to have more of an incubator approach is guys will surprise you. Players will surprise you when you need. And there's a year where the plan that I had, and that's one thing too. If you're whatever business you're in, you can start the year with a plan. You just better know that thing's going to look different. It's not going to ever look the way that you started. And there's a time where we have a group of 5 on the floor, and I looked over at my assistant. I thought, never did I dream that this group of 5 would be out there. But you said it. People get sick. People get injured. Things happen in life. There's grades. There's all this stuff. So, but if you are developing and training, and we want them to have this confidence that borderlines insanity. Or one of the best compliments I ever got from an opposing parent was, your guys all shoot with so much courage. I'm like, that's it. You nailed it, ma'am. But they surprise you. And one of the best examples of courage in coaching is this summer Olympic team with Steve Kerr. You mentioned his name before, but him and that staff had the courage, the confidence, the stones, whatever you want to say, to not play guys that are all-star millionaires. Jason Tatum just won the championship, and he is incredible, and he did not play. Joel Embiid, a former MVP, had one game where he didn't play, one game where he played a lot. It was all about the matchups. And I'm sure, even though in social media, everybody wanted to just throw darts and throw flames at Kerr for what he's doing, I'm sure they had. Do we really think that Kerr just said, oh, yeah, hey, I didn't tell him he wasn't going to play? No, those were conversations. Tatum had to choose, okay, I'm going to be a professional here, or I'm going to quit or pout. Thankfully, he chose the right thing. Same with Embiid. And they won a gold medal because that was what was most important. If they can do it at that stage, golly, at Grapevine Faith Christian School. I can
Well,
choose.
but here's what that takes, is that takes a leader being authentic, being vulnerable,
And ready to take the
inviting.
heat.
Well,
Ready to
but
take the heat too.
yeah, but I'm thinking about as the team first, he's got to have a vision. And the only way they buy into that is if he's done enough to connect with them and he's casting a vision that they can understand and say, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. I'm willing to do whatever to be a part of that. And you're going to tell me, and you know me well enough, and you understand what's important to me and what I'm in this for. You know, when you think about your current upcoming, season team, right? And you think about all those players. Well, there's a handful of them that are like, man, I am playing because I either have the ability or I want to play somewhere beyond high school, right? You have those players. And then you have the players that are like, man, I just want to be a part of this team because I love what it's about and I want to contribute and I'm willing to do whatever. And then there's the other ones that are like, hey, I'm here because my buddies are here, right? That's what you're going to have. And that, I don't think that's a far stretch. But if all of a sudden you go to the kid who has all the ability to be a shooting guard, right? They have the ability to go to a Division I team and to be a two, to maybe even be a point guard, right? Just think about your same. And you tell them, hey, I know that's what you want. And I know that's what you're aiming for. But I'm going to grind you so hard in the post, you're never going to see the ball. You're never going to shoot because that's what our team needs and I don't have any other option. Then what's going to happen quickly? You may get away with that for a few games. You may get away that for a year. But if that's your only option, you say, hey, Matt, this is where we're at. We've had some this is what we are. I know where you want to go. And I appreciate and I can recognize that. But at the same point, I know for our team, if you can do this for us, you're going to build a skill set that will actually help you at that next level because you're a bigger guard that if you can take the smaller guys and say, hey, you can roll to the post, you're actually going to develop a good skill set. If you approach that in that way, then he'll probably buy in. But if you say, hey, you're our post, I'm like, coach, I'm a guard. Like, I want to be a guard and I have the ability to play at that next level. And you're telling me I'm dumping you in the post and no one's ever going to be able to see you play at that level. Then that's not you being a good coach.
Yeah, you got to be careful being so tied and married to your systems that you have that you're not able to adjust to make it work for the team that you have. And you mentioned something about those three types of players. You nailed it. Like it, love it, live it. Like that's really when we come down to it. That's the guys we have on our team. There's a couple teams in DFW. They maybe have a lot of love it and live it guys, but typically you have majority are like it's, or sorry, maybe love it's. You have a few that just like it and a few that live it. But you have a lot of guys in the middle. Part of the art of it is knowing that, knowing their stories and knowing their aspirations.
Knowing that it's going to evolve. Yep. I see this. I know your son plays soccer. My son played soccer for a long time. I coached soccer for a long time. And soccer is one of those U.S. sports, I think more so than basketball, but probably close with basketball. You find a lot of you either live it or you're dead to me. AAU is classic in our area for this. You either live it or you're dead to me.
Yeah.
Like my youngest son is a basketball player, played years of AAU and gets into that tweener, 7th, 8th grade going to high school. And it's either you live it or you're dead to me. And that's what I've seen. And I don't know if it's the same in your area. It is absolutely disgusting because you see good players who have yet to hit their athletic prime, who have yet to really grow. They aren't those early developers in middle school. And
which is who everybody gravitates to, but there's a lot of not numbers, but show that a lot of times the ones that start and have all that attention early on end up kind of, I hate to say burning out, but yeah.
But they do. Yeah. I mean, my 16-year-old son is an example of that. Played soccer, played at a very high level, got to play at an academy in Spain.
Wow.
And his last real foray was actually at Nationals in Dallas a couple years ago. And, he was willing to do whatever, put in any work. He's growing like crazy. He grew 8 inches in 2 years. And his coach got to a point and he's like, I don't want to play college soccer. It's like, I don't want to play college soccer. I want to be a kicker. And he's a really good kicker. And he pretty much, the coach was like, you're dead to me. He's still on the team, still going to nationals. And the coach pretty much treated him, because he wanted to play a different sport, had an aspiration of a different sport, that you're dead to me. And so instead of fostering the ability that he had and knowing that he could continue to serve and help the team because he no longer lived it, but he still loved it, the coach pretty much said, you're dead to me. And it was like, are you crazy? Well, here was a team of 18 guys that went to nationals, who 9 of them no longer play the sport. And it wasn't because of those kids. It was because of that coach who all of a sudden, on his own ego, well, if you don't live it, then you're not worth it to me.
Yeah.
Where you need on a roster of 18, on a roster of 12, a basketball team, there is no possible way at amateur, unless you're at it. I would say this, even be honest. A lot of college ranks, you don't have 12 guys, 15 guys on the roster that are living.
No, you better at least love it, or else why the crap are you doing that? But live it. I think you're right.
But there's a lot of athletic, you would say, either, that are, hey, I really like it and I'm pretty good at it. It's pretty easy and I can roll with it. I don't love it, but I like it, that end up playing college basketball. But there are, they can just do it, right? I see that like Division III football. There's a lot of kids that just like it, and it's a way to get to college, and they don't really know any different. And they're just like, yeah, I'll go with it. I mean, there's professional athletes that, go through that. Yeah, I'm amazing at it. I like it. I see it in football, right? That, the guys that play for a couple of years and they're like, I'm out, but I made my pension. I just didn't love it. And you're like, dude, you are an all-star. It's like, yeah, but I'm burnt out, right?
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
It's so important for leaders to spend time to recognize that and accept that. And the thing that I think, coming back to, if they like it, foster it, and maybe they'll love it. Because if they like it and you drive them away, they're going to hate it. But if you foster it, they could possibly love it. And at the same point, if they love it and you foster it, they could possibly live it. But if you make them miserable, they're never going to live it, because they have too many options. And coming back to the world we're in today, like, I can go do something else.
The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Man, you nailed it right there. I was going to say something very similar, but with the challenge being for us, and I don't think this is just with coaching. I could think this would be with any organization, any school where you have a lot of people trying to work together. You're going to have those 3 groups, and you got to create an environment where all 3 are finding value at the same time. And I think it's all wrapped up in this bubble, in my opinion, of fun. I think fun is so underrated. Fun is a way that to keep those dudes that just like it engaged and bringing joy. But it's also going to push the ones that love it and the ones that live it. You take the fun out, and that's where I see the live it guys start to die off. The love it guys never make that leap, and the like it guys start to think, why am I even here? This isn't fun at all. I think whatever we're doing, go back to the why, usually is because you enjoyed something when you started doing it most of the time. And then along the way, coaches, parents, or just pressures suck the fun out of what we're doing. And I think as coaches, that's a mandate for me, is we're going to have fun every day while we get better, while we're competitive. But man, that's the art of it right there.
To me, you go to the highest level, the professional level. The coaches that get the most out of their teams, they find ways to have fun, because it's still a game to have fun. And again, I don't think that matters if it's a sport. That can be an office.
Yep.
That could be a school. That could be anywhere. One of the reasons people do things is for fun. They do it for recognition. They do it for validation. They do it for purpose. All the different factors, right? Fun is a component of it. I don't have to be a starter. I don't have to be a varsity player to play and love it. I don't have to be. If I know I have value and I'm bringing value to the team and the coaches and the other players are telling me I'm bringing value, then if I'm having fun and I have a place, I'm probably going to do it. And I would guess there's rarely a time where you said, man, I wish we didn't have so many players that just wanted to be here. It doesn't happen because
No.
even, when everything's going great and everyone wants to be there, at some point, there's going to be enough adversity where everyone doesn't want to be there.
That's right.
But if you can embrace it and understand that, then you can foster that. And you have the potential of getting to that place where it's like, I'd rather have more than not enough because I need more and not enough.
And you got to self-evaluate if you do find yourself in the place where, golly, where is everybody? All right. What are we doing or not doing to create the environment where they love, like where this is the big time? Happy to be here. Couldn't imagine being anywhere else. That's not natural for everybody. But I do think the natural thought of an empty gym or low numbers is kids. It's just the culture around here. Well, you can choose that or, yeah.
Let me ask you this. And again, maybe it doesn't happen for you there at Grapevine, but maybe it does, or maybe, other teams. How many times have you struggled with players not being great about attendance? Meaning, maybe it's some players here, there, or maybe they're like, if there's any reason for them to miss practice, I have a little bit of a nagging injury or this or that, they're going to miss practice, right? And I've seen this in regard to, whether it's sports my kids have been involved in, coached and whatever. And it always frustrates me when coaches punish players arbitrarily because they miss practice. There's usually a reason why, and especially if they don't drive, there's a reason why.
No doubt.
And it's like when you punish the player, like, hey, you showed up 10 minutes late to practice, I'm going to make you sit out. I'm going to punish you by run or whatever else. All right. That's usually, unless they're driving, it's usually not them. And it's going and talking to the parent and it's understanding why aren't they there? For example, you get into the high school ages, especially I know this and, more of the club sports, you get into if they don't live it and they love it like it, their practice attendance, their training attendance can be, maybe less than ideal.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I've seen in coaches is, this idea, well, if they're not coming, they just don't care. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that oftentimes when you have that choice and you get a little bit older and they don't come, it's because they don't feel valued. They don't feel like them being there is important. And especially if they get nagged on because they weren't there. One of the things that when I was coaching high school soccer, and one of the things I always made an effort, it's like, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to see you. And spending, especially, a player that maybe struggles a little bit, have the conversation with them. It's like, hey, how are you doing? Like, take that time to connect. And what I found is those players, once you did that, their attendance went up.
Yeah.
Because they felt valued. They felt like they had a reason to be there. The coach cared about them. And usually their attendance is they don't really care if I'm here or not.
I think you're right on the money with the reasons why people miss and really the extreme ownership I think we can take for that. And also I've made some decisions just for me that I think have helped in this situation, which is understanding open gym time versus mandatory team practice time. I have to approach those very differently. But what I used to do as a younger coach is even open gyms. Hey, man, why are you late? They're at your gym. It's optional. They're there. Who cares what time they got there? Like 5 minutes left. Hey, man, let's go. Let's work. Let's train. You got it. You're here. So understanding the difference with that time, but then even in season, having standards For here are at the very beginning, here are the standards for practice. Expectation is that you are at every practice. If something comes up, communicate well. Give us a heads up. If you know you're going to be late, shoot me a text. I'm okay with like we have towel pushes. Towel pushes or you get your hands on there. I don't like when consequences affect the entire team, especially when it's only one kid or two, whatever. So like not starting a kid, that affects the entire team. It's not their fault that he was late. And even if it's not his fault, the beauty with not having rules, but having standards is I can live in the gray. Life is not fair.
You have to.
And not every situation is the same. So when a kid is busting it, I know he's busting it from something that he had going on at his church and he gets there late. I can choose whether I hammer or not, or where I acknowledge or not. But the beauty is you got to disconnect the emotion from it. 5 minutes late, hey, knock out 2, you're good to go. And he gets down and back. Even if there's no good reason, if it's just poor planning, the next time it happens, all right, let's get 3, knock it out. Conversations have to follow after.
That's the key right there. There has to be a conversation.
No doubt.
There has to be. It can't be arbitrary without a conversation, because that conversation is the connection to understand what's really going on.
Yeah. Why were you late? Well, coach, my parents, like they were arguing. I got stuck at the house. Listen, I understand that. In fact, after practice, I'd love to have some more time with you if that's okay. Yeah. I think you walk them through. So it's not people come up with things and they get out of doing something. Standards are there. I get to choose the severity, which again, I'd rather err on, I'm so glad you're here. Knock this out really quick. Let's just get practicing. And then lean into it more. But what that does too is, again, what do you want them to just not show up because they're afraid of doing something or come late? And then, but all of these are all of the adversity that we go through. They're all teaching moments.
Here's 2 things that I'm thinking about. You mentioned earlier about the idea of, getting extreme punishment if you're late, right? That was a world that, 30 years ago we grew up in. That was like, you're late, you are getting hammered, right? You are going to get punished. But that was the world, right? And that was also a world before cell phones. That was a world before a lot of other things. That was I would say, a very militaristic leadership that imparted, I think, about a Bobby Knight type.
Right? I was going to say, Bobby Knight created that world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that was very much the world. Sure. And one of the great lessons that I learned early in my professional career, I had a peer that taught me this. And he goes, if you're going to be late, as soon as you know you're going to be late, let somebody know. So this was in sales when I was doing sales. And he would routinely, if I was with him and we were going to be late to an appointment, if he knew 20 minutes before the start of that appointment, hey, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, I'm letting you know. Everyone was always like, great. Okay, things happen. That is life. You're not late when you show up 15 minutes. Hey, sorry, I'm late. If it's a 15-minute drive and you're going to be 15 minutes late, you knew 30 minutes beforehand that you were going to be late. Let somebody know, especially as a coach, you're putting together a practice plan, you're putting together whatever, and like, hey, you're going to be 15 minutes late. Okay, great. We will do the 5-on-5 drills. I'm going to move that a little bit later because I know we're not, as opposed to, oh, dude, not everyone's here. Now we got to scramble. You let people know, but that also transcends over into professional life, because now all of a sudden you're teaching them, say, hey, when you know you're late, let people know. And then, there's no big deal. The worst is, and I saw a coach that conditioned players this. If you showed up late or you told the coach you weren't going to show up, you got punished. If you didn't show up, you didn't acknowledge it, you just showed up whenever, you never got punished. And so what ended up happening is no one ever told him anything. Yeah. Or they would just lie to him. They would never tell him the truth, because the truth had consequences and ignoring had no consequences. And then, unfortunately, that team and knowing several of those players, that are still together, and they're a different coach. And he's like, why aren't they telling me what's going on? It's like, oh, well, they were conditioned to lie. They were conditioned to not tell the truth. And here's the other factor that I want to hold on, especially in the space of coaching amateurs. You coach high school athletes. You know what you're coaching? You're conditioning the next generation of workers. So maybe they have a high school job, maybe they go to college, or when they're in, 6, 7 years, 24, right? They're going to remember how you led them, and that's going to be their expectation of their first boss. So however you treat them, however you condition them, is what they're going to expect in their first job. And I think that is one of the greatest underestimations in our world today, is that youth coaches from 8 to 18 do not understand, organizations do not understand, whether it's AU to, US Soccer Federation to, like you name that, it does not matter. They do not understand as an organization. Our coaches are training the next generation of leaders. And so when you hear companies that complain about their current workforce, and they're saying, well, Gen Z are snowflakes. They quiet quit. They can't deal with adversity. They can't handle accountability. And often they point the fingers at parents. I would contend, that's not who you need to point the fingers at. The fingers that need to be pointed are the schools, the clubs, and whatever organizations they were active in, dance, soccer, basketball, whatever it may be. Go there. How were they led? How were they held accountable? How were they conditioned? Because those were the people. Those were the leaders in their lives that are teaching them what it's like to be an employee. And I think that's one of the greatest passions that I have, because I've seen it go sideways. And that revelation, say, that's our greatest opportunity, is when you go coach a basketball game, you're coaching the team, you're getting ready. You're preparing the next employee at Amazon. You're preparing the next employee at, Bank of America. You're preparing the next employee at whatever organization. It doesn't matter. That's what you're really doing. And you're doing it through basketball. You're doing it through your relationship. Man, when you stop and really take a deep breath and understand that, it makes your job as a basketball coach a lot more impactful.
Before I let you go, something really fun I like to do is the speed round. These are going to be quick questions. A lot of people have listened to you before. After the speed round, they're really going to know who you are. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Butter pecan.
Nice.
That's going old. That is some straight up Ohio, Pennsylvania. You've had some butter pecan in Pennsylvania. I know you have.
No doubt. Okay. Top 3 dinner guests you'd like to have across any time period.
There's so many. The people that I've recently, Nelson Mandela, Teddy Roosevelt, William Taft. And the reason why is I read their 3 about those 3 this year. So I read Nelson Mandela's A Long Walk to Freedom. I also read a book called The Bully Pulpit by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and she wrote about Taft and Roosevelt. And it was so interesting and introspective to learn about them. I could go into Lincoln. I could go into, of course, Jesus. I would go into Paul, the Apostle Paul. I mean, no doubt. Apostle Paul is probably, let me just stop and think, probably top of my list. Just his humility, but also, as I explained to people that aren't believers, it's like, take right now, the leader of Hamas, right? Take the leader of Hamas. And then all of a sudden, he is on that walk in between Lebanon and Israel, right? And that's where they're at in Damascus, like that whole space right now. Yeah. He takes that walk, and all of a sudden, Jesus comes to him and said, hey, stop killing my people. And he becomes the #1 evangelist for Christianity. Yeah, that's who that dude was.
It's one of the main reasons for arguing for the truth of the New Testament, of the faith, is his conversion, because he didn't gain anything from that. If anything, he lost all of his status, all of his wealth, and was, by the way, shipwrecked, bitten by a snake, stoned, and executed. and
Just all of
imprisoned
it.
before the last
All of
one,
it.
and never wavered. And I love that. That's really good. Texting or talking?
I like to talk. There's an element of, we'll text a lot, but it's the ability to just dial somebody up and like have a conversation. And, I have a handful of people that, good friends that, like we've gone on for an hour and a half or so and have those conversations, and they can be wild and varied, and it is connecting.
Yeah. Favorite holiday?
4th of July.
Nice.
I love fireworks. It's also close to my birthday.
What book would you give someone?
And today, I mean, there's a lot of books that are meaningful to me. I think the Bible's too easy, right?
Yeah, take it off. The same way with Jesus in the top. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, all right, that's a placeholder in and of itself. A book that today, I know one, and is probably not as revered as a leadership book by some as others. Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Goddard. It is a book that I absolutely, and I give a lot of books to people, but it's a book that if you're in any service industry, any industry at all that is serving people, coaching, leading, any of it, to me is one of the top 5 leadership books ever.
Wow. All these talks I've had, I've never heard of that before.
Yep. Will Goddard.
Excited. Excited to
you
look
can look it
into
up.
it.
I did a podcast with him. It was fun conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah, good dude.
I got 2 more.
All right, go for
I'm
it.
going to go 3. Favorite place to travel?
Europe, Italy. New Zealand was amazing too. I just haven't been there in so long. I was there in college. I studied abroad. New Zealand's beautiful, but I just love Central Europe. Yeah.
How do you drink your coffee?
Black.
Nice.
Straight up black. Yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah, that's it.
Why would I put crap in it? It's
Yeah, I mean, you can. I mean,
yeah.
it's all good. Whatever.
Last one. I got to throw a basketball question in there.
Okay.
In basketball, as a player, who is the greatest of all time? Who's the
Stop. There's only one. Only one. And all these young people, because they've seen LeBron play. LeBron, no. Jordan. Not even a
It's
question.
settled right there.
He is the GOAT. He is the GOAT.
Tyler, I want to thank you so much for giving up over an hour and a half of your time, and from not
My
having
pleasure.
any relationship and connection. Just thank you for saying yes and sharing all these amazing leadership tips and culture tips and so many things that will definitely help coaches. But I think, like you mentioned a bunch, this goes beyond that. So just really appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to reach out, have a conversation. It's been fun. Love learning about you, and look forward to interacting with you more.
If anybody would like to learn more about you, listen to the podcast, follow you on Instagram, which is where I met you, learn about the lessons from the cows and all those good things that you have on there. What's a good way for them to follow you or learn more?
So 2 things. I would say most of my content, whether it's podcast, daily stuff, go to YouTube. So Impact Driven Leader, that's my brand. You can go to YouTube, find all sorts of podcasts, other videos, shorts there. You can also go to my website, tylerdickerhoof.com, and as well, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those things. But YouTube is probably the hub for everything. And then listen to the podcast. I release new episodes every Wednesday.
That's awesome. Man, appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Scoreboard Media. Scoreboard Media works with high schools across the country to run professional sponsorship programs on their LED scoreboards. Whether you already have LED and you just want to supercharge the revenue, or you want to use sponsorship revenue to buy new LED video scoreboards, Scoreboard Media can help. They work with sponsors and advertisers locally, regionally, and nationally who want to connect with your school's community. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to start the conversation and see what's possible. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.